Today is December 27th, 2016. And those who watched my previous video, I showed how the nations, by judging Israel, when Israel has done nothing wrong, Israel is settling in their own land. Judea and Samaria belong to Israel. But the world, because they are the ones who have taken other people's land, have committed genocide, have ethnic cleansed the lands that they captured, and they have put their own people in there. History condemns the rest of the world because that world accuses Israel of doing that what they did. And Israel has done no such thing. And now, after this UN Resolution 2334, now the story is coming out that John Kerry, Secretary of State for the United States, is planning on coming out with a resolution that recognizes the Palestinian, so-called Palestinian state, and to force Israel to go back to the 67 borders. This is on Superstation95.com. Secretary of State John Kerry has been working on the text of a resolution at the UN formally recognizing the state of Palestine, and it will use the 1967 Israel border to establish Palestine's physical boundaries. Superstation 95 has learned that from our UN sources here in New York that the resolution will contain an authorization for the use of force. Yes, you heard it, folks. The use of force to compel Israeli compliance, and it will be introduced and voted on before Barack Obama leaves office. If I can remember, I will provide a link to this article. And of course, I don't know if this is true, but we won't have long to find out. But the way that this current administration is going here in the United States, this appears to be the way that they're headed. And of course, they will get the other nations to push this, just like the Obama administration got Egypt to push 2334. And of course, made sure that the United States abstained because they did not want to hurt the feelings of any Jews living in the United States. But you see, folks, that which is done in secret, that which is whispered in secret, will be shouted on the housetops. But I want to go to an article written by Daniel Horowitz, which will further condemn the world. If anybody has trouble being convinced by my arguments in the my last video, this right here, this article from Daniel Horowitz that was posted on December the 27th, today, on the Conservative Review, should undoubtedly remove any doubt whatsoever. The article is called Israel's Right to Build Homes is Settled Under International Law. Here we go again with the UN peddling the biggest geopolitical hoax of all time. That Israel's control over Judea and Samaria, which they call the West Bank, and it's not, it is Judea and Samaria. And they're claiming that it's illegal, and that it belongs to a distinct Arab people called Palestinians. And the source of Islamist mayhem across the globe is a smattering of Jewish homes being built in their ancestral land. Land which, by the way, is virtually invisible on a map compared to the mass of land controlled by Muslims. While Islamic jihadists are blowing up every corner of the world, what is the international community focused on? Yep, those pesky little Jewish homes built in their ancestral homeland on a parcel of land not even visible on the map. The UN Security Council passed a resolution before Christmas weekend that reaffirms that the establishment by Israel of settlements in the Palestinian territory occupied since 1967, including East Jerusalem, has no legal validity and constitutes a flagrant violation under international law. And folks, let me remind you that West Jerusalem is not Jerusalem. East Jerusalem is Jerusalem, the old city. Obama instructed the U.S. ambassador to the United Nations to abstain from vetoing that resolution, an unprecedented step given our history of vetoing anti-Israel resolutions. Worse, it appears that Obama was likely the ringleader behind the resolution because, according to Israeli sources, Vice President Joe Biden convinced Ukraine to support the resolution, a move that shocked Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu. Now, this next portion of the article is titled, Actually, Israeli Sovereignty over Judea and Samaria is Enshrined in International Law. The notion that there is any moral equivalence to Jews building homes in their homeland that they won back in a defensive war after it was illegally occupied by Jordan, and brutal terrorists illegally occupying land that was never given to them, is reprehensible. But first, a brief history lesson. The only binding resolution of international law, a resolution which has never been countermanded to this very day, is the July 1922 Mandate for Palestine. Adopted by the League of Nations, that resolution recognized the historical connection of the Jewish people with Palestine to the grounds for reconstituting their national home in that country. It called for the creation of a Jewish national homeland, listen carefully, anywhere west of the Jordan River. Once the League of Nations was disbanded and the United Nations formed in its stead, the international community agreed to maintain all agreements and not alter in any manner the rights whatsoever of any states or any peoples or the terms of existing international instruments to which members of the United Nations may respectively be parties. Article 80, UN Charter, emphasis added. This provision wasn't inserted by accident. It was known as the Jewish People's Clause. At the time, it was adopted in 1945 in order to enshrine the 1922 Mandate into international law. The Mandate for Palestine, adopted by the League of Nations, was the last legally binding document delineating regional borders. In Article 5 of the Mandate, it explicitly states, the mandatory shall be responsible for seeing that no Palestine territory shall be ceded or leased to or in any way under the control of the government of any foreign power. The Palestine Mandate and Iraq was given to Britain to serve as a temporary trustee based on the resolution between the four principal Allied powers in April 1920 at the San Remo Conference in Italy, which was signed by 51 nations. It was at that conference where the world powers adopted the 1917 Balfour Declaration, which originally allocated the eastern part of the Mandate for a Jewish state as well, creating a Jewish state. This same conference that created the Jewish state west of the Jordan River also created Syria, Lebanon, Saudi Arabia, Jordan, and Iraq as Arab states. The legality of the 1922 mandate was adopted that same year by the U.S. Congress in H.J. Resolution 360 and signed by President Warren Harding. The newly created Arab country of Jordan attacked Israel in 1948, seeking to annihilate its inhabitants and illegally occupying Judea and Samaria until 1967. That year, Israel won back the territory originally allocated for a Jewish state as a part of the 1922 League of Nations Agreement. That agreement has never been modified. Therefore, there is no such thing as pre-67 borders. They were merely 1949 armistice lines between Israel and neighboring countries after they launched an illegal war of extermination. It has nothing to do with the notion of a unique Arab-Palestinian entity west of the Jordan River. There was never any internationally recognized legal sovereign occupying Judea and Samaria from the time of the British Empire fell until 1967. Jordan's occupation of the area west of the Jordan River was never recognized. To the extent there is an Arab-Palestinian state, it is the modern state of Jordan, which has already sucked up to 70% of the original mandated Palestine allocated for a Jewish state under the first plan of the Balfour Declaration. Did you hear that? Although the UN has bloviated time and again about Israel withdrawing from the region, those are merely recommendations and political arguments. They are not legal arguments, because once that land was allocated for the Jewish state by the binding charter of the UN, it cannot be rescinded. Without Israel's consent, any more than Florida can be taken away from the U.S. and be returned to Spain without our consent. Now, I will stop right there. You get the picture now? The world made a covenant with Israel back in 1917 and 1922 and reaffirmed that covenant in what was it here? 1945. And now they have broken that covenant. And now they are planning to force Israel out of its own land. Of course, those who were paying attention knew this was going to happen. Those who were reading their Bible knew this was going to happen. It was inevitable. I said it yesterday and I'll say it again. This will bring damnation upon the Gentiles. The Gentiles condemn Israel for doing, and Israel has not done what the Gentiles have done. They have not done the evil that the Gentiles have done. But they are condemning the Jews, are falsely accusing the Jews of doing what the Gentiles did. That demands judgment. It's going to happen, folks. Joel 3 is about ready to commence. Please prepare yourselves. Again, now, like I said, I don't know if this article on Secretary of State John Kerry's drafting UN resolution recognizing State of Palestine. I don't know if this is true or not, but there are rumors floating around that this is what he's planning, and he's planning on it before Inauguration Day. We shall see. But I have every reason to believe that this is true. And if it is true, brace yourselves, prepare yourselves. The world is not going to be ready for what is about to hit it.